I pulled into my driveway in Edna, Minnesota on a freezing January afternoon, exhausted from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, only to find my heated garage door wide open and a pearl-white Lexus SUV parked inside where my truck should have been. My breath hung in the air as I sat there in my Ford F-150, staring at the scene before me. The heated garage I had spent $15,000 installing last fall, the one with the expensive radiant floor heating and insulated doors, was being occupied by someone else's vehicle. My truck sat outside, covered in a thin layer of ice and snow from the storm that had rolled through that afternoon. The temperature was hovering around -8 degrees. I climbed out of my truck, my boots crunching on the frozen driveway, and walked toward the garage. The Lexus gleamed under the overhead lights, completely dry and warm. I could see the heat waves shimmering off the concrete floor. Steam rose from my mouth as I exhaled sharply, anger building in my chest. A note was tucked under my windshield wiper. I grabbed it, the paper stiff from the cold. Nathan, as HOA president, I have determined that your heated garage constitutes an excessive energy usage that affects our community's environmental standards. Per HOA Regulation 47.3.2, I am temporarily requisitioning this space for official HOA use until we can discuss your violation at the next board meeting. The meeting is scheduled for February 15th. Please park in your driveway as normal residents do. Regards, Deborah Anderson, HOA President. I read the note 3 times, each reading making my blood boil hotter. Deborah Anderson. Of course it was her. The woman who had made my life a living nightmare since I moved into this neighborhood 6 months ago. She had cited me for having my trash cans visible from the street for more than 2 hours after collection. She had written me up for planting rose bushes that were supposedly not on the APPROVED Chinese letter list. She had even tried to fine me for having a blue mailbox instead of black. But this was different. This was my property, my garage, my money. I pulled out my phone and called the police non-emergency line. A dispatcher answered on the 3rd ring. Edna Police, how can I help you? Hi, I need to report a vehicle on my property. Someone has parked their car in my garage without permission. The dispatcher took down my information and address. Is the vehicle blocking you from entering your home? It's blocking me from using my garage, which I pay for and own. Sir, if this is a civil matter between neighbors, we typically recommend handling it through proper legal channels. Is there an immediate threat or danger? I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my frustration in check. The person claims to be the HOA president and says she's requisitioning my garage for HOA use. That would be a civil matter, sir. The HOA and its rules would need to be addressed through your HOA board or with a lawyer. We can send an officer to document the situation if you would like. Yes, please. An officer arrived 20 minutes later. Officer Martinez was a stocky man in his 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened to my story, examined the note, and took photographs of the Lexus in my garage. Mr. Stevens, I have to agree with dispatch. This is a civil matter. The HOA president, even if she's completely wrong, hasn't technically committed a crime that we can arrest her for right now. She left a note explaining her reasoning, however faulty. You will need to document this, contact a lawyer, and potentially take legal action. Can't you at least make her move the car? Not without her present and without clear evidence of criminal trespass. She could claim you gave her permission, or that there was a misunderstanding with HOA rules. Do you have security cameras? No, I have been meaning to install them. I would recommend doing that immediately. In the meantime, document everything. Keep that note, take photos, and contact a lawyer first thing tomorrow morning." Officer Martinez left, and I stood in the cold, staring at Deborah's Lexus sitting warm and cozy in my garage. My garage. The temperature continued to drop as evening approached. I could see my neighbors peeking through their curtains, watching the drama unfold. I went inside my house and cranked up the heat, trying to warm up from standing outside. My cat, Shadow, rubbed against my legs as I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table, the notes spread out before me, and began researching Minnesota property law and HOA regulations on my laptop. The more I read, the angrier I became. There was absolutely nothing in our HOA bylaws about energy usage, nothing about requisitioning private property, nothing that gave Deborah Anderson or anyone else the right to use my garage. I pulled up the HOA documents I had received when I bought the house and searched every page. The only mentions of garages were regarding door colors and maintaining them in good condition. I called my real estate agent, Martha, who had helped me buy the house. "Nathan, hi, what's going on?" I explained the situation. Martha listened quietly, then let out a long sigh. "That woman is absolutely out of her mind. There is no such regulation. I have sold 15 houses in your neighborhood, and I know those bylaws inside and out. She is making things up." What should I do? Document everything, get a lawyer, and honestly, I would change your garage locks immediately. It's your property. She has no legal right to be there. Won't that make things worse? Nathan, she is already using your heated garage without permission. She has essentially stolen your property. Changing the locks is within your rights as the homeowner. Just make sure you keep all documentation of what she has done. I thanked Martha and hung up. Then I called a 24-hour locksmith. Rick's locksmith arrived at 8 p.m. A young guy named Jake showed up in a van with his company logo on the side. He took one look at the situation and whistled. "Man, that's cold. Someone just took over your garage." The HOA president thinks she runs the world. I have seen some crazy stuff, but this is up there. Let me get you fixed up. Jake worked for 45 minutes in the freezing cold, installing new locks on both the garage door leading into my house and the main garage door opener. He programmed new remotes and gave me 3 copies of the new keys. There you go. Nobody is getting in without your permission now. That will be $320. I paid him gladly. Money well spent. The next morning, I woke up early and took photographs of everything. The Lexus still sat in my garage, the note, the locks, everything. Then I called every lawyer in the area who specialized in HOA disputes. The third one I called, Patricia Chen, agreed to see me that afternoon. Before heading to work, I printed out several copies of the note Deborah had left and the HOA bylaws. I wanted to be prepared. At 9 a.m., I was surprised to hear my doorbell ring. I opened it to find Deborah Anderson standing on my porch, her face red with fury. She was exactly what you would expect. Blonde hair in a tight bob, expensive athletic wear that she clearly never exercised in, and a scowl that could curdle milk. "Nathan Stevens, you changed the locks on the garage." "Good morning, Deborah." "Yes, I did. That's my garage. It's HOA property while under review for violations." "Show me in the bylaws where it says that." Her mouth opened and closed. "It's implied under the Environmental Standards Clause." "There is no Environmental Standards Clause in our HOA bylaws. I checked. Every page." "Well, there should be. This community has standards, Nathan. We cannot have people running heated garages all winter, wasting energy and driving up everyone's costs. My energy bill is my business. My garage is my property. Your car being in my garage is theft. It's not theft. It's temporary requisition." "That's not a real thing, Deborah. You made that up." Now, if you want your Lexus back, you have about 3 hours before I call a towing company to have it removed from my property." Her face went from red to purple. "You wouldn't dare try me. I have already filed a police report. I have photographs. I have the note you left claiming you could take my property. I have a lawyer." "Do you?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "The HOA will back me up on this." "Then I will sue the HOA too." 3 hours, Deborah. Get your car out of my garage." I closed the door in her face and watched through the window as she stomped back to her house 3 doors down. She pulled out her phone and began making calls, gesticulating wildly. 2 hours later, my doorbell rang again. This time it was 3 people, Deborah and 2 other neighbors I recognized from the HOA board, Mark Henderson and Susan Williams. I opened the door but did not invite them in. "Nathan, we need to discuss this situation rationally," Mark said. He was a tall man in his 60s, wearing glasses and a cardigan that made him look like a retired professor. "I agree, so discuss it. But first, get Deborah's car out of my garage." Susan stepped forward. She was a petite woman with curly gray hair and worry lines around her eyes. "Nathan, Deborah may have been a bit overzealous in her approach, but we do have concerns about the heated garage. Several neighbors have mentioned it." "Which neighbors?" "Well, we cannot disclose that information." "Of course you cannot. Look, here's the deal. My heated garage is on my property, uses my electricity, and violates absolutely no HOA rules. If you can show me, in writing, where any rule is being broken, I will happily discuss it. But in the meantime, Deborah's car is being towed in 45 minutes if it's not moved." Deborah's eyes blazed. "You are being completely unreasonable." "I am being unreasonable. You stole my garage." "I did not steal anything. I was enforcing community standards." "Show me the rule. Right now. Show me in the bylaws where you have the authority to do what you did." All 3 of them were silent. "That's what I thought. 45 minutes. Mark cleared his throat. "Nathan, perhaps we can reach a compromise. What if Deborah removes her vehicle and we table this discussion until the next board meeting?" "There's nothing to discuss at a board meeting." "But yes, remove the car and we can all move on with our lives." "Fine," Deborah spat. "But this isn't over. I will find a way to make you comply with community standards." "Good luck with that." They left, and 15 minutes later I heard my garage door rattling. Deborah was trying to open it with her old remote. It didn't work, obviously. I watched from my window as she grew increasingly frustrated, pressing the button over and over. Finally, she pulled out her phone and called someone. 5 minutes later, a locksmith van showed up. Different company from the one I had used. I walked outside. "Excuse me, but that's my garage." The locksmith, an older man with gray hair, looked confused. "Madam, is this not your property?" "It's HOA property," Deborah insisted. "It's my property," I said, pulling out my driver's license and property deed that I had wisely brought with me. "My name, my address, my garage." The locksmith looked at Deborah. "Madam, I cannot break into someone else's property. That's illegal." "I'm the HOA president." "That doesn't give you ownership of his garage." "Sorry, I can't help you." He got back in his van and drove away. I crossed my arms and stared at Deborah. "You have 30 minutes before I call the towing company. I cannot get into the garage to get my car because you changed the locks." "That's a you problem, Deborah. You shouldn't have put your car somewhere it didn't belong." "This is extortion." "No, this is consequences." 29 minutes. She looked like she might explode. "Fine. Open the garage so I can get my car. Say please." "What? Say please." "Use some manners." Her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. "Please." I pulled out the new remote and opened the garage door. It rolled up slowly, revealing her Lexus still sitting pretty in the warmth. The radiant heat from the floor created a visible shimmer in the cold air. Deborah stormed into the garage, clicked her key fob, and got into her car. She started it up and backed out quickly, nearly hitting my mailbox in the process. She sped off down the street without another word. I closed the garage door and went inside, feeling victorious, but knowing this was far from over. That afternoon, I met with Patricia Chen at her law office in downtown Minneapolis. She was a sharp woman in her early 40s, with intelligent eyes and an air of competence that immediately put me at ease. I laid out everything that had happened, showing her the note, the photographs, the police report number, and the HOA bylaws. Patricia read through everything carefully, making notes on her legal pad. When she finished, she looked up at me and smiled. "Mr. Stevens, you have an excellent case. What Deborah Anderson did was illegal. There is no requisition clause in your HOA bylaws. There is no environmental standards regulation. She essentially broke into your garage and stole the use of your property. Can we sue her? Absolutely. We can sue her personally and the HOA if they try to back her actions. I would recommend sending a cease and desist letter first, clearly stating that any further harassment or attempts to access your property will result in legal action. We will also demand that the HOA hold a special meeting to address this matter and potentially remove her from the board for overstepping her authority. How much will this cost me? My retainer is $2,000. If this goes to court, costs could increase, but honestly, I think once they receive a letter from a lawyer, they will back down quickly. This is such a clear-cut case that no reasonable attorney would advise them to fight it." I wrote the check and left her office feeling more confident. Patricia said she would have the cease and desist letter drafted and sent by the end of the week. For the next few days, things were quiet. I went to work, came home, and enjoyed my heated garage in peace. But I knew Deborah well enough to know she was planning something. The following Tuesday, I received a letter in the mail from the HOA. It was a formal violation notice, citing me for unauthorized structural modifications to my property. According to the letter, my heated garage was installed without HOA approval and needed to be removed, or I would face daily fines of $100. I immediately scanned the letter and emailed it to Patricia. She called me within an hour. "Nathan, this is exactly the kind of retaliation I expected. The good news is that heated garages do not require HOA approval according to your bylaws. Any improvements that are not visible from the street and do not affect the structure's exterior do not need approval. Your heated garage is an interior modification. So what do we do?" I am going to send them a very strongly worded letter explaining that this violation notice is retaliatory and illegal. I am also going to demand that they hold a special meeting to address Deborah's actions. If they refuse, we file suit. Do it. Patricia's letter went out the next day. I received a copy via email. It was 3 pages of legal language that essentially told the HOA board they were idiots and needed to fix this immediately or face serious legal consequences. 2 days later, I received a call from Mark Henderson. "Nathan, we would like to schedule a special board meeting to discuss the recent events. Would you be available this Saturday at 10 a.m.? Will my attorney be allowed to attend?" There was a pause. "Is that necessary?" After what Deborah did and after receiving a bogus violation notice, yes, it's necessary. Fine. Your attorney can attend. We will meet at the community center. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray. Patricia met me at my house at 9:30 and we walked together to the community center at the end of the neighborhood. It was a modest building with a meeting room, a small kitchen, and a gym area. The board was already there. Deborah sat at the head of the table, looking smug. Mark and Susan sat on either side of her. Two other board members I had not met before were also present, George Martinez and Linda Patterson. Patricia and I took seats across from them. Patricia set her briefcase on the table and pulled out a folder full of documents. "Good morning," Mark said stiffly. "Thank you for coming. We wanted to discuss the situation regarding the heated garage and come to some resolution." Patricia spoke before I could. "Let's be clear about what happened here. Your HOA president, Deborah Anderson, illegally accessed my client's private property, parked her personal vehicle in his heated garage without permission, and left a note claiming authority she does not have. When confronted, she attempted to hire a locksmith to break into the garage. She then retaliated by sending a bogus violation notice. These actions are illegal, constitute harassment, and potentially warrant criminal charges." The room went silent. George and Linda exchanged uncomfortable glances. Deborah's face hardened. I was acting in the best interest of the community. By stealing someone's garage. Patricia's voice was ice cold. "Please show me in the HOA bylaws where you have the authority to requisition private property." "It's not stealing. It's temporary use for community purposes." "What community purposes?" "You parked your personal vehicle there to keep it warm. That's not community use, that's personal benefit obtained through abuse of power." Mark cleared his throat. "Perhaps we can all calm down and discuss this rationally." "I am perfectly calm," Patricia said. "What I am not is patient with illegal behavior. Your president committed theft of services, trespassing, and harassment. Then your board sent a retaliatory violation notice that has no basis in your own bylaws. My client's heated garage is an interior modification that requires no approval." Susan spoke up quietly. "We were not aware that Deborah had used Nathan's garage for her personal vehicle. She told us she was inspecting it for code violations." Deborah shot Susan a furious look. "I was inspecting it, and I found violations." "What violations?" I asked. "Be specific." "The energy usage affects the entire community's environmental footprint." "The HOA bylaws make no mention of environmental footprints or energy usage regulations," Patricia said, sliding a copy of the bylaws across the table. "I have read every word of this document. My client is violating nothing." Linda Patterson, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked at Deborah. "Deborah, did you actually park your car in his garage?" "I was there to inspect it, and yes, I moved my vehicle into the garage to properly assess the heating system's impact." "For 2 days," I said. "My car sat outside in -degree weather while yours was warm and cozy in my garage. That's not an inspection, that's theft." George Martinez shook his head. "This is ridiculous. Deborah, you cannot just use other people's property." "I am the HOA president. I have the authority to inspect and enforce community standards." "You have the authority to inspect common areas and cite violations that actually exist in the bylaws," Patricia corrected. "You do not have the authority to use someone's private property for your personal benefit." "That's called abuse of power." Mark looked tired. "What do you want us to do, Nathan?" Patricia answered. "First, the bogus violation notice needs to be rescinded immediately and in writing. Second, Deborah Anderson needs to issue a written apology to my client. Third, she needs to be formally reprimanded by this board for abuse of power. And fourth, my client wants assurance that there will be no further harassment or retaliation." "Absolutely not." Deborah stood up, slamming her hands on the table. "I will not apologize for doing my job." "Then we will see you in court," Patricia said calmly. "We will sue you personally and the HOA for harassment, abuse of power, theft of services, and emotional distress. Discovery will be very interesting. I am sure there are other incidents where you have overstepped your authority." The other board members looked at each other uncomfortably. I had a feeling I was not Deborah's first victim. Mark sighed heavily. "Can we have a few minutes to discuss this privately?" "Of course," Patricia said. "We will wait outside." Patricia and I stepped out into the cold hallway. She looked pleased with herself. "That went well," she said. "You think they will agree? They would be fools not to. Deborah clearly has a history of this kind of behavior, and the other board members know it. They don't want the liability of a lawsuit." We waited for 15 minutes. Through the door, I could hear raised voices, particularly Deborah's. Finally, Mark opened the door and invited us back in. Deborah was still standing, her arms crossed, looking furious. The other board members looked defeated. Mark spoke carefully. "We have discussed the situation. The board has agreed to rescind the violation notice. We will put it in writing and send it to you by Monday. However, the issue of the apology and reprimand needs further board discussion at our regular meeting next month." "Not acceptable," Patricia said. "The apology and reprimand happen now, or we file suit on Monday morning." "You cannot force me to apologize," Deborah shouted. "You're right, I cannot. But I can sue you for tens of thousands of dollars and make your life very difficult for the next year or two. Your choice." Susan spoke up. "Deborah, you used his garage without permission. You parked your car there for 2 days. Just apologize so we can move on." "I was doing my job," George leaned back in his chair. "Deborah, I have been on this board for 8 years. What you did was not in your job description. You went too far." Again. That last word hung in the air. Again. Linda nodded. "This isn't the first time we have had complaints about your methods. Remember the situation with the elderly couple and their garden gnomes? Or when you tried to fine the newlyweds for having wedding decorations up for more than 3 days?" Deborah's face was crimson. "I am trying to maintain property values by alienating every homeowner in the neighborhood," Mark said, his patience finally snapping. "Deborah, either apologize to Nathan right now, or I am calling for a vote to remove you from the board entirely. I am done with this." The room fell silent. Deborah looked around at her fellow board members, realizing she had no support. Finally, she looked at me with eyes full of hatred. "Fine. I apologize for using your garage without permission." "Not good enough," Patricia said. "A proper apology acknowledges the harm caused and commits to changed behavior." Deborah looked like she might spontaneously combust. Through gritted teeth, she said, "I apologize for using your garage without permission. It was wrong and I should not have done it. I will not bother you about your heated garage again." "There," Patricia said. "Was that so hard?" "Now, the formal reprimand needs to be in writing and placed in the HOA records." Mark nodded. "We will draft a formal reprimand and include it in the meeting minutes. You will receive a copy." "Perfect," Patricia said, standing. "We will expect all documentation by Monday. If there is any further harassment or retaliation against my client, we will file suit immediately." "Understood." Everyone nodded except Deborah, who just glared. Patricia and I left the community center. Outside, she turned to me with a satisfied smile. "That went even better than I expected. You should have no further problems. Thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without you." "That's what I'm here for. Keep all the documentation safe, and if Deborah or anyone else from the HOA bothers you again, call me immediately." We shook hands, and I walked home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Monday came and went with no documentation. Tuesday as well. On Wednesday, I called Patricia. "They have not sent anything. Give them until Friday. If we don't have the written documents by then, I will file suit on Monday." Friday afternoon, I received an email from Mark Henderson with 3 attachments. The rescinded violation notice, the formal reprimand of Deborah Anderson placed in the meeting minutes, and a letter from the HOA board stating that my heated garage violated no bylaws and required no approval. I forwarded everything to Patricia. "Perfect," she said when she called me. "Keep these documents forever. You're in the clear." I should have known it would not be that simple. 2 weeks later, I received another violation notice. This time, it was for my mailbox being the wrong shade of black. According to the notice, it needed to be true black, not charcoal black, and I had 30 days to replace it or face fines. I took a photo of my mailbox and my neighbor's mailbox. They were identical. Same brand, same color, bought from the same hardware store. I emailed Patricia with the photos and the new violation notice. She called me immediately. "This is continued harassment. We are filing suit." "Really? Over a mailbox?" "It's not about the mailbox, Nathan. It's about Deborah retaliating against you despite being reprimanded. This establishes a pattern of behavior. We need to stop it now before it escalates." Patricia filed the lawsuit the following week. We sued Deborah Anderson personally and the HOA board for harassment, retaliation, and emotional distress. We asked for $25,000 in damages, legal fees, and an injunction preventing further contact. The lawsuit was served on February 28th. By March 3rd, I received a frantic call from Mark Henderson. "Nathan, please, can we settle this? The HOA insurance will not cover Deborah's personal liability, and she is panicking. She should have thought about that before she continued harassing me." I know. The board is voting this week to remove her as president. We are also considering removing her from the board entirely. Can we please work something out? I told Mark I would discuss it with Patricia and call him back. Patricia was thoughtful. "We can settle, but I want a strong agreement. Complete prohibition on further contact, all legal fees covered, and a monetary settlement." I am thinking $15,000. Will they go for that? They don't have much choice. If this goes to trial, they could end up paying a lot more, plus court costs and bad publicity. Mark called me back the next day accepting the settlement terms. The HOA would pay $12,000 in damages and cover all legal fees. Deborah would be removed from the board entirely and prohibited from contacting me in any way. The settlement agreement also included a clause that the HOA would not cite me for any violations unless they were clearly documented in the bylaws and approved by a majority vote of the board. The settlement was finalized on March 15th. I received a check for $12,000 and Patricia sent me a bill for her services. After paying her, I still had $8,000 left over. I used some of it to install security cameras around my house. Life returned to normal. Spring arrived, and I could finally enjoy my house in peace. I saw Deborah occasionally around the neighborhood, but she would turn and walk the other direction whenever she saw me. Perfect. In late April, something unexpected happened. I received a knock on my door around 7 p.m. I opened it to find Susan Williams, the board member who had been present at the special meeting. "Hi, Nathan. I hope I am not bothering you." "Not at all." "What's up?" I wanted to personally apologize for everything that happened with Deborah. Several of us on the board knew she was too aggressive, but we did not want to rock the boat. We should have stopped her sooner. "I appreciate that, Susan. Really. Also, we are holding elections for a new HOA president next month. Several neighbors have suggested your name." "Would you be interested?" I laughed. "Me, after everything that just happened?" "Exactly because of everything that just happened. You know the bylaws, you stand up for homeowners' rights, and you are reasonable. We need someone like that." "I don't know. I work long shifts at the hospital." "I am not sure I have the time." The president position is not as time-consuming as Deborah made it. She was just a busybody who had nothing better to do. Really, it's just one meeting a month and handling any issues that come up, which are usually minor. I thought about it. Part of me wanted nothing to do with the HOA ever again, but another part of me realized that having a voice on the board would protect me and other homeowners from future Deborahs. "Let me think about it," I said. Susan smiled. "That's all I ask. The election is May 10th. Let me know by the end of the month." After Susan left, I sat in my heated garage, yes, my beautiful heated garage that I had fought so hard to keep, and thought about her offer. Shadow the cat joined me, curling up on my lap as I sat in my truck with the garage door open, enjoying the mild spring evening. Maybe it was not such a bad idea. I could make sure the HOA operated fairly and according to the actual bylaws, not someone's made-up rules. I could prevent other homeowners from going through what I had experienced. By the end of April, I had made my decision. I called Susan and told her I would run for HOA president. The election was held on May 10th at the community center. About 40 homeowners showed up, which was apparently a record turnout. My opponent was George Martinez, the board member who had spoken up against Deborah at the meeting. He was a good guy, and I would have been happy with him winning too. We each gave a short speech. George talked about his 8 years of experience on the board and his vision for maintaining property values. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. I moved to this neighborhood because I wanted a nice, quiet place to live. Instead, I got harassed by an HOA president who made up rules as she went along. I had to hire a lawyer and file a lawsuit just to enjoy my own property in peace. I am running for president because I believe the HOA should serve homeowners, not control them. I believe in following the actual bylaws, not someone's personal preferences, and I believe in common sense. That's it. That's my platform. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. Apparently, I was not Deborah's only victim. Multiple people came up to me afterwards sharing their own stories of her harassment. The votes were counted. I won by a landslide, 32 votes to George's 8. I became HOA president on May 15th. My first order of business was to review every violation notice that had been issued in the past 2 years. I found dozens of bogus citations that Deborah had issued for things that were not in the bylaws. I rescinded all of them and sent apology letters to the affected homeowners. My second order of business was to create a simple, clear guide to what was and was not allowed according to the bylaws. I sent it to every homeowner, so there would be no confusion. My third order of business was to establish a formal appeals process for any violation notices. No more one person making unilateral decisions. The neighborhood began to relax. People started actually talking to each other again, instead of living in fear of random citations. Property values went up because people wanted to live in a neighborhood with a reasonable HOA. In June, I saw Deborah at the grocery store. She was with an older woman who I assumed was her mother. When Deborah saw me, her face went pale. She quickly turned her cart around and went down a different aisle. I just smiled and continued shopping. In July, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Deborah's lawyer. My heart sank as I opened it, expecting another legal battle. Instead, it was a notice that Deborah and her husband were moving. They had sold their house and were relocating to Arizona. The letter requested that the HOA provide documentation that all assessments were paid in full so the sale could close. I verified with the HOA records that their assessments were current and sent the documentation. 2 weeks later, Deborah was gone. The neighborhood threw a barbecue that weekend. Nobody said it was a celebration of Deborah leaving, but everyone knew it was. Someone brought a cake that said, "Welcome Summer," but the timing was not lost on anyone. I stood in front of my heated garage that evening, the door open to let in the warm summer breeze, and reflected on the past 6 months. What had started as a nightmare scenario with someone stealing my garage had somehow ended with me becoming HOA president and driving out the person who had made everyone's life miserable. Shadow rubbed against my legs, purring. I picked him up and scratched behind his ears. "We did it, buddy. We survived Deborah Anderson." Mark Henderson walked over, beer in hand. "Hell of a journey, Nathan. You can say that again. I am sorry we did not stop her sooner. We all knew she was out of control, but nobody wanted to be the one to stand up to her. I didn't want to either. She just pushed me too far." "Well, I am glad you did. This neighborhood is better with you as president than it ever was with her." We clinked our beers together and watched as kids played in the street, something that had rarely happened when Deborah was around. She used to cite people for kids leaving toys in their yards or playing too loudly after 6 p.m. As summer turned to fall, I settled into the role of HOA president. It was actually not that bad. Most months, the meeting lasted less than an hour. We discussed things like when to schedule snow removal, which landscaping company to use for the common areas, and whether to install new lights along the walking paths. Normal, boring stuff. In October, I received a Facebook friend request from someone named Zachary Armstrong. The name seemed familiar, but I could not place it. I checked his profile and realized he was Deborah's husband. Curious, I accepted. He sent me a message immediately. "Nathan, I want to apologize for everything Deborah put you through. I tried to talk her out of using your garage, but she would not listen. She convinced herself she was right and everyone else was wrong. Moving to Arizona was the best thing for both of us. She is getting therapy for her control issues. Again, I am very sorry." I appreciated the message and told him so. It was nice to have closure and to know that even Deborah's own husband knew she had been wrong. Winter came again, and I enjoyed my heated garage without any drama. My truck stayed warm and dry, my energy bill was my own business, and life was peaceful. In December, the HOA held its year-end meeting. One of the agenda items was reviewing the past year and setting goals for the next. When we got to that part of the meeting, Susan Williams spoke up. "I just want to say that this past year, despite how it started, has been the best year this HOA has had in a long time. Nathan has been an excellent president, and I think we should all thank him for bringing common sense and fairness back to our community." Everyone in the room applauded. I felt my face get hot, embarrassed but pleased. Thank you, everyone. I just tried to do what should have been done all along. Follow the rules, treat people fairly, and stay out of everyone's business unless there is an actual problem. After the meeting, several people approached me asking if I would run for president again in the spring. I had not really thought about it, but I agreed to consider it. On New Year's Eve, I sat in my heated garage, door closed against the bitter cold outside, and made a list of what I had learned over the past year. 1. Stand up for yourself even when it's scary and uncomfortable. 2. Document everything, always. 3. Good lawyers are worth their weight in gold. 4. Most people are reasonable if you give them a chance to be. 5. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well and letting karma handle the rest. I looked at my list and smiled. It had been one hell of a year. I had gone from being harassed by a power-hungry HOA president to becoming the HOA president myself. I had stood up to a bully, won in court, and made my neighborhood a better place. The heated garage that had started all of this hummed quietly beneath me. the radiant floor keeping everything warm and cozy. It had cost me $15,000 to install, $3,000 in legal fees and countless hours of stress. But I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Because it was mine. My property, my garage, my choice. And nobody, not Deborah Anderson or anyone else, could take that away from me. As the clock struck midnight and fireworks erupted across Edna, I raised a glass of champagne to the new year and to the simple principle that had gotten me through the past 12 months. Stand your ground, know your rights, and never let anyone bully you off your own property. Spring arrived again, bringing the HOA election with it. I ran for president again, this time unopposed. The neighborhood had found stability and peace, and nobody wanted to rock the boat. During my acceptance speech, I kept it brief. Thank you for your trust. Let's have another boring, drama-free year where everyone just enjoys their homes in peace. Everyone laughed and applauded. Boring was exactly what we all wanted. One afternoon in May, I was working in my garage, changing the oil in my truck, when I heard a knock on the frame of the open garage door. I looked up to see a young couple I did not recognize. Hi, I'm Tom, and this is my wife Jennifer. We just moved in 3 doors down in the house that Deborah used to own. I wiped my hands on a rag and shook hands with them both. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Nathan Stevens, current HOA president. Jennifer's eyes widened. Oh. You're the one who had the whole situation with the previous owner, right? Our real estate agent told us about it. That's actually one of the reasons we felt comfortable buying here. She said you cleaned up the HOA and made it reasonable. I laughed. I tried to. How are you settling in? Great, actually. Everyone has been so welcoming. It is nothing like the horror stories we have heard about other HOAs. That is what we are going for. Just let me know if you need anything or have any questions about the neighborhood. They thanked me and left, and I went back to my oil change, thinking about how much had changed in just over a year. That evening, as the sun set and the temperature dropped, I closed my garage door and felt the warmth from the radiant floor heating spreading through the space. I thought about everything that had happened, from that freezing January afternoon when I discovered Deborah's Lexus in my garage to now, where I was leading the HOA and helping new families feel welcome. Sometimes the worst situations turn into the best opportunities. If Deborah had not pushed me so far, I never would have stood up to her. I never would have learned about my rights as a homeowner. I never would have become HOA president. And dozens of other homeowners would still be living under her tyrannical rule. In a weird way, I almost wanted to thank her. Almost. The following months passed peacefully. We had a neighborhood block party in June, a movie night in the park in July, and a back-to-school barbecue in August. The HOA had become what it was always supposed to be, a way for neighbors to work together and build community, not a tool for one person to control everyone else. In September, I received an email from Patricia Chen, my lawyer. She was writing to check in and see how things were going. I filled her in on everything that had happened since the lawsuit settled, including becoming HOA president and Deborah moving to Arizona. She wrote back, "That is the best possible outcome. You did not just win your case, you changed your entire community for the better. I am proud to have represented you." That meant more to me than she probably knew. October brought the 1-year anniversary of my security camera installation. I reviewed the footage and realized I had not had a single suspicious incident since installing them. The cameras had been insurance I hoped I would never need, and so far, I had not. In November, the HOA held a meeting to discuss snow removal contracts for the winter. It was the kind of mundane, necessary business that HOAs should focus on. We reviewed 3 bids, asked questions, and voted on the most reasonable option. The whole meeting took 45 minutes. After the meeting, George Martinez pulled me aside. "You know, Nathan, when you first moved here and started having problems with Deborah, I thought you were just another troublemaker. I am man enough to admit I was wrong. You have been the best thing to happen to this HOA. I appreciate that, George. I really do. I mean it. You could have just moved away, found a different neighborhood. Instead, you fought for your rights and made things better for everyone. That takes guts." We shook hands, and I drove home feeling grateful for how everything had turned out. December was quiet. The holidays came and went peacefully. On Christmas Eve, I sat in my heated garage, drinking hot chocolate and watching the snow fall outside. Shadow was curled up in his cat bed on the workbench, purring softly. I thought about where I had been a year ago, stressed and angry, fighting a legal battle with the HOA. And now here I was, running the HOA, living in peace, and actually enjoying my home the way I had always intended. The heated garage that had caused so much trouble hummed softly beneath me, doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping my space warm and comfortable during the brutal Minnesota winter. I pulled out my phone and looked up Deborah Anderson on Facebook one last time. Her profile showed photos of her new house in Arizona, a sprawling ranch-style place with a large yard. She looked happy, or at least content. Maybe the change of scenery and therapy had helped her. I hope so. Holding on to anger helps nobody. I unfriended Zachary Armstrong and deleted my search history. That chapter was closed. As the new year approached, I made a resolution to be the kind of HOA president I wished I had when I first moved in. Fair, reasonable, and focused on building community instead of enforcing arbitrary rules. The years that followed were uneventful in the best way possible. I served as HOA president for 3 terms before stepping down to let someone else take a turn. The heated garage that had started everything never caused another problem. I used it every winter, grateful for the warmth and comfort it provided. I occasionally wondered what would have happened if I had not stood up to Deborah that cold January day. Would she still be terrorizing the neighborhood? Would I have just given up and let her win? Would other homeowners have continued suffering in silence? I was glad I would never know the answers to those questions. I had chosen to fight, and that choice had made all the difference. Looking back now, several years later, I can say with certainty that changing those locks on my heated garage was one of the best decisions I ever made. Not just because it protected my property, but because it set off a chain of events that transformed an entire neighborhood. Deborah Anderson used my heated garage for her car, discovered I changed the locks and kept it, and in doing so, accidentally gave me the motivation to become exactly what the neighborhood needed, and my heated garage. It still works perfectly, keeping my truck warm and dry through every Minnesota winter. Some investments pay off in ways you never expect.